Okay, so welcome all. You are at the July quarterly meeting of the K12 Community of Practice around using post-secondary data. This is an agenda of what we're going to cover today, or what we'll get into. So we'll do a little welcome and introductions, an overview of the K12 Community of Practice. You may already know that's why you're here, but I think it's just important to say the purpose of this group and the reason that we come together at the top of each meeting. And then we'll turn it all over to you to have a discussion and then talk about some next steps. So by way of introductions, we are a small group, so I think it would be great if we could actually go around and say our names and what agency we represent. And if you're not from QIP, what brought you to this meeting today? So why you came, what do you want to get out of this? So my name is Angela Jupenville, and I'm with Quality Information Partners, QIP, and we run the community of practice. And I'm joined by my colleagues, Denise and Meg. I'll let them introduce themselves. Denise.
My name is Denise Lawson, and my primary role is helping with the Action Fund and other aspects of the community of practice. Meg.
Hi, I'm Meg Edwards, and I also help with the community of practice and do just all sorts of communication things for QIP.
And I'll call on people to make it easier, and I'll start with Brody.
Hello, my name is Brody McGuire. I'm with Elevate at AZ, an initiative of the Greater Phoenix Chamber Foundation. I'm excited to be here and share some best practices and hopefully glean a few things.
Great, thanks for joining us. And I'll go to Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Scudder. I'm our College and Career Access Officer for the Idaho State Board of Education. We're a unique state entity in that we oversee both our K12 system and our higher ed system. So the data for both resides underneath our office. But even with that, we still struggle sometimes to get the information back from higher ed back to our K12 partners.
Okay, thanks for being here, Sarah. Jill?
Hello, I am Jill Marecki with Detroit Regional Dollars for Scholars. Here just to learn and connect with other folks as we're working on our application. Also put it out to my whole team. So Erin Talbot is also on my team, just trying to get everybody up to speed, but she does a lot of our NSC work currently. So yeah.
Great, thanks for being here, Jill. Erin, did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I am Erin Talbot at Dollars for Scholars. I am the Awards and Alumni Manager here. Looking forward to learning more. I was interested to hear you're going to talk about the U.S. Department of Education and all of those changes today, especially as I work with scholarships and our college students to learn how that will impact them. But excited to learn a little bit more here.
Thanks for being here. Liz?
Hi, I'm Liz Delbaum. I work for the Education Research and Data Center in Washington State, and we house the statewide longitudinal data system. And so we deal with a lot of the, obviously, K-12 and the post-secondary intersections, especially around dual credit. And so really interested to hear about best practices from others and see how we can kind of coordinate or align, mirror for comparison purposes. Yeah.
Great. Thanks for being here, Liz. And Erin?
Hi, I'm Erin Pollard, and I am, well, technically currently still at the U.S. Department of Education, where I worked with states on how to use their data and to help improve policy and practice. And kind of as I am transitioning and the department's transitioning to these new steps, I'd love to hear from you all about what you're doing. And so some of us can help think better how we can support you now that IES is no longer going to be in existence.
Thank you for being here, Erin. Okay, so now I just wanted to give a brief overview of the K-12 community of practice. You will receive all of these slides so you can access all of these links. So this is a freely accessible, community-driven collective You're here because you work in the K-12 space with post-secondary outcomes data in some way, shape, or form. And you're here because you want to collaborate to improve pathways for students by using those post-secondary outcomes data. And the ways that you can all connect with one another and collaborate. We have a forum, which is an online discussion board that has a number of threads. There's a couple of boards that you can contribute to and discuss with one another. We have a monthly newsletter. If you haven't already signed up for it, that link will take you to the sign up form. Well, actually, by being here at this meeting, you are cordially signed up for the newsletter. So no need to take an extra step there. We have a speaker series. You can click on that link once you get the slides to suggest a speaker, including yourself. The speaker series is a little different from the quarterly meetings. The quarterly meetings happen on a quarterly basis along this schedule here. And quarterly meetings are a chance for you all to come together and discuss topics of interest. The speaker series is more of a presentation style where we have someone who presents on a topic that's of interest to everyone, and then there's some discussion afterwards. So this is less presentation based and more discussion based. The speaker series is a little more presentation based with some discussion. And then we also have a resources page on the K12 Community of Practice website, which is here, k12usingpsdata.com. And you can download resources, you can upload resources. So those are all the ways that you can all engage with one another. Any questions about this or the purpose of the K12 Community of Practice before I move on? Great. And so without further ado, we'll lead into the discussion. So I don't have like a presentation prepared, or we don't have a presentation prepared about the changes that are happening at ED, but we know that those things are most likely impacting everyone who comes to the table to use data. So we wanted to provide a space and an opportunity for you all to share how those changes are impacting your agency. And here's some discussion questions that we have. We don't have to stick to these. We, of course, want to stick to the topic of post-secondary outcomes data because we know you all deal with data in many shapes and forms, but these are just some guiding questions. So how have the recent and ongoing changes at ED impacted your agency's access to post-secondary outcomes data? And then a little more broadly, just changes to federally funded programs in general that allow you to have access to data, or you provide data to, or they provide data to you. How's that impacting your access to quality post-secondary outcomes data? So sort of like, what are you dealing with now? How are these changes impacting you now? And how do you foresee them impacting you in the future, not only in terms of access, but in terms of use? What kind of impact might that have on students and educators? You know, we live in a time, in an era where data-driven decision making is a really important buzz phrase, right? So how is that going to be impacted by this? And then lastly, if there's any resources you have that you can share, please feel free throughout the discussion to pop those into the chat. Or if you're a member of the forum or want to become a member or an active member, you can go over to the forum and share them there. So I'm going to actually pop all these questions into the chat, and then I will stop sharing so that we can have a discussion together. And really, the floor is open to anyone to comment and begin. Okay, hold on. The formatting is really wonky. Let's see. Oh, it fixed itself. Wow, magic.
I guess I have a question in regards to the first question. I think I think Erin, correct me if I'm wrong, but we get like our graduation poll from National Student Clearinghouse around August. And so I wasn't anticipating that being affected, but will that be affected? Does anyone know? because yeah, I think we, pulled that enrollment data for spring or winter 2025, depending on how you call it. And that seemed to be, as accurate as it usually is for all of our post-secondary students. So, we haven't gotten there yet, but was still counting on that. But I'm not sure. I'm not, I'm not sure if that will be affected or not.
Hmm. I'm also not sure how NSC data collections will be impacted by the changes, but I'm not sure if anyone else on the call has any insights on that. And that's a question I'll jot down, and we can start a thread on the forum and put it out there to the larger group to see if anyone has any insights on that for sure.
Okay. Do you know, I think I saw something from Bill DeBon at NCAN in the forum. Is he like in the forum, or did somebody else post something from him?
That's a great question. So Bill, at NCAN. So NCAN is our partner in this work, and he's an active
Okay.
member of the forum.
Okay.
So yes, he is
Okay.
you have access to him for sure.
Okay. Yeah, I was like, I think they switched. They used to have a email listserv and they switched over to Slack. And I'm just like not as active in Slack. So yeah, I could log back in there to see if there's been any discussion as well, because I know he's pretty up to date on all of that
Mhm.
all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we also have a contact over at NSC, so I can push your question to her as well. I know she's like a product manager, so I'm not exactly sure, but she might have some insights on that. So I'll make sure to jot that down. Anyone else have any? Brody, yes.
Yeah, so I can see or we are feeling a little bit of the data in relation to recent changes is breakdown by demographic, in terms of students on free and reduced lunch, different demographic areas. It just kind of gets broken down differently. And some funders are still looking for that kind of demographic data, so I can see that being a potential challenge. I don't know if anybody else is experiencing that or not, or anticipates experiencing that.
So just to rephrase, you're seeing a shift in what data is collected about different or how data is collected or how it's divided into subgroups or not.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, has anyone on the call experienced like a lack of access to data that they've needed in order to comply with certain reports?
For Idaho, we've had some issues, but not on this side of things, but more on the FAFSA side, just getting like files for us to do our state scholarship work. That's been kind of a challenge. I think what our group is most concerned about is we use IPED's data to be able to make comparisons across states, because we have access to our own internal state data. But I think the issue around definitions that internal states may have, and maybe that's maybe where Brody's going, don't always align apples to apples, but having a national data set that people are reporting to where the definitions are the same so that you can make apple to apple comparisons, I think that's the area that we're concerned about. And so just trying to learn a little bit more on how other states are creating different definitions for themselves. So if we're going to need to collect our data differently or have multiple definitions so that we can have an internal data discussion around this element, like a go on, conversation versus what the national go on conversation and definition is when national data may not be available to us any longer.
Yeah, I think we also, I mean, we just use iPads data in our student information system when we use Copilot, and they load all the iPads data in, and then we have all of our NSC data there to make those like review the data together. It's not from a state perspective, so that is something that we're familiar with. We've also used that. The data in iPads. Um, I think it's all in iPads, but I'm not sure if we were pulling from something else to show the average cost for, high finance, Pell eligible students, and graduation rate for minority students and, um, all students. So that really informed a lot of our K12 advising work. Building reach, match, and safety lists for students in the districts that we serve. So I know that data has been very valuable for us in direct student service programming. So I think that would just make it harder for us to advise students. Yeah, without having that data.
Another, I guess, area of concern is with the federal government, data was free. And so with iPads, all the institutions were submitting. And now I'm worried about the burden of everyone having to pay private vendors for that data in order to have that apples to apples. So it'll be interesting to see because Peterson's and College Board and US News have that common data set. Are states going to want to drive their institutions to respond to that when they may have not in the past? And then the state would have to, or entities would have to pay those entities to get the data back so that they can provide, like Jill's talking about, those comparisons and that information to students for cost of attendance and things like that.
Mhm. Is that something you foresee your states prioritizing or being able to do?
I mean, from our office perspective, we're going to prioritize them submitting their data directly to us.
Right. Hmm.
So I don't think we would necessarily.
Is that a system that you already have in place for them to be able to do that and those connections? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. I'm curious if folks are also seeing any difference in what data is collected and if any data definitions or data elements or terms have changed. Welcome, Kyle.
Hi, sorry, I'm late.
That's okay. I'm gonna re-pop the discussion questions into the chat because I don't think if you join late you can see them.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, we're not strictly sticking to this, but just just some inspiration for discussion. And Kyle, would you mind just actually introducing yourself to the group and where you're from?
Sure.
Thanks.
Kyle Jones. I am a policy manager at the Pritchard Committee in Kentucky. Yeah, and loving being a part of this group with QIP and the Action Fund and all of it. So
Great,
glad to
thank you.
be here.
And feel free to jump in, Kyle, at any point to respond to any of these questions. Yeah. I'm also curious if you're able to share or comfortable to share if any of you have had discussions like this in your agency about potential shifts you'd have to make or potential challenges that you foresee and how you might mitigate those.
At least for our agency, there's still a little bit of wait and see to know what's going to be available, what's going to be impacted. Like others, we will use the IPEDS data for common definitions and comparisons and getting those institution school level characteristics to use alongside of our state data. But I don't think we've identified a different source to go to. We're kind of waiting to see what is going to get funded, what's going to get cut, and it might take a year to know what submissions are not going through anymore.
Right.
Yeah, so we're still waiting.
Yeah. Any other points of discussion that folks want to bring up? Or direct questions you have for your colleagues?
Yeah, I'm wondering, like, I'm curious to see like what for Michigan, like if there is, I don't know the answer to a lot of the questions. From just a community-based organization, kind of not necessarily wait and see, just wait and see what is available or what the state level response is. So I'm wondering if they're like what would be the best, you know, if there's somebody we should be reaching out to at our state level, or like our state college access network to kind of get a little bit better understanding of what we could be doing, to advocate or share like how we think this may affect us and our students. Um, so it's enlightening, and also just like I it's hard to know what exactly, the impacts are going to be. So I'd like to just get a little bit more ahead of the game as much as possible. So is there like, is it, yeah, how do I know who to go to at a state level would be my question to the group or anyone.
Yeah, and I jotted that question down too, but I'm curious if anyone on the call has any advice for Jill. Kyle, you're also at a community-based organization?
I am, yeah. Richard Committee is a nonpartisan think tank policy outfit, and we're spoiled and privileged. KY Stats is a statewide agency here in Kentucky that has just an exceptional data repository that we benefit from. So much of our work is in collaboration with them. And yeah, I would want next time I'm in a meeting with them, I think I'll ask these questions to them of how they're negotiating this space because I know it is going to affect them and I know they're worried about it, but I don't know the extent to which they are changing their strategies at the moment. I think they're kind of in a wait and see as well. Because they're so well established too, I wonder how that's going to affect their streams for excess. And I'm not sure, to be honest with you. They're a very friendly organization if you want to reach out to them and just kind of see how they're exploring these situations. Yeah.
Yeah, would you be able to like drop that name in the chat or something or their website?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And then for my knowledge, which is pretty limited, but here at QIP, we did some work with CEPI in Michigan. And everyone there just seems very nice and knowledgeable. So I would say they're a good place to start.
Nice.
Michigan
Yeah.
specifically.
Okay. Yeah, I was looking at the I think it was in the newsletter, one of the couple of best practices from Gates and like looked at the statewide thing. So I pulled all of that SEPI information. So that is on my list to reach out to them. There's a lot of information there. So
yeah, I'd say CEPI is sort of like the equivalent of the KY stats in
okay.
Michigan.
Okay, cool.
And I know they do a lot of like work sort of with community or with local stakeholders in order to make sure that their products and their services are serving the community.
Okay.
And so I imagine that they would be open and transparent enough to talking through how these changes might impact the work that they're able to do.
Yeah. Yeah, we looked when I first started, we looked a lot at their post-secondary outcomes by high school to try to do some comparisons to the students in our program versus their whole high school population and so forth. So there's a lot, and they have a very jam-packed newsletter. So that's a good reminder to reach back out to them because I've never like connected with somebody directly there.
Anyone else have points of discussion they want to bring up with the group?
So I think everything that we do is so student focused, and so I know we're talking about data, but all of the data comes from our students, and so maybe this isn't the right question for this group, but is there anything that we need to be doing to communicate with our students now? If there are gaps in data that is shared at these different levels, how can we work with our scholars to fill in those gaps with self-reported data? So just kind of some different things that we're thinking about. I don't know if that's their question for this group, but things that we're thinking about.
That's a really excellent question. And thanks for that great reminder that the data comes from the students and that, they're ultimately going to be the ones who are impacted by this. And I don't have an answer, so I didn't mean to interrupt anyone who might have an answer to that question. Anything else?
I guess like I was thinking on Aaron's question, years ago when I was working in a charter district, they use Beyond 12, a platform for tracking. It had NSC data integration as well as, like texting and things like that for students. And they did have a component where it was very clear, like where the student level data. So if you're looking at um, like the enrollment for a graduating class, they had they on their dashboards, it was very clearly delineated of like, okay, this data came from NSC and this data came from, a student survey or a scholarship disbursement. So that kind of, we do that in various ways of tracking our students, but it was nice to have that fuller picture, or if you're talking like different levels of credentials or how to track like trade certificates and things like that as that landscape keeps changing. I know like a dashboard like that, or reporting like that was helpful for me as a practitioner, to share with the district leadership, just a fuller picture of what the post-secondary enrollment and outcomes were. So I'm not sure if that would be something that states or other agencies think about, as they navigate any changes in new data methods and collection and tracking.
Can you say the name of that dashboard again?
Yeah, the organization is Beyond 12,
Okay.
like beyond 12 years of high school. So tracking, and they partner with NCAN, and have been around for a really long time. So yeah, but similar to that, like the platform that we use, they're just trying to track all of that data with organizations or schools that want to follow their students after high school.
You for sharing that resource. Okay, well, if there's no other points of discussion, and feel free to interrupt me if there are, I'm going to share next steps, but I lost that window, so give me a moment. So our next steps are, you can continue this conversation in the forum. And actually, Meg, can you pop a link to the forum in the chat, please? I wanted to draw your attention specifically to the introductions thread. And again, you'll get this slide deck, so you can click on that. But when you go to the forum, you can find the introductions thread, and it's very popular and a fun way to connect. So feel free to participate in that, read what other folks have written, and introduce yourself there. You could fill out the form to suggest speakers for our speaker series or quarterly meeting topics that you want us to discuss. And then our next quarterly meeting will be in October. I don't have a date yet for you to save, but October. And thank you, Meg. So there's a link there to take you on over to the forum if you want to post resources or questions, communicate and collaborate. And yeah, thank you all so much for being here. And let me put my email in the chat too, in case you want to reach out with further questions, suggestions, comments. And thanks for joining us.